Watch your tone, because it turns out it really isn't what you say, it's how you say it, at least when it comes to couples in couples counseling. That's according to a study in Proceedings of Interspeech. Researchers developed a computer algorithm to gauge relationships between spouses based on their vocal patterns. Working with hundreds of recorded conversations from marriage therapy sessions collected over 2 years, the algorithm was able to predict whether a relationship was going to get better or worse with an accuracy of just under 80%. How they did it? The recordings were divided by acoustic features that used speech processing techniques to track pitch and voice warble and intensity. These clips from the researchers' training video illustrate psychological states that characterize distressed relationships. This one, for example, shows negative affect and reactivity, behaviors that relationship experts believe are troublesome.
I want you to just come home at a more reasonable time rather than, walking in the door at 11.
See, I just don't think you understand how much I have to do, like what my work entails.
Well, what is there to understand?
The counseling sessions were also tested against behavioral analyses with codes for positives such as acceptance and the negatives such as blame. Using only that more standardized research method wasn't as predictable as listening to the vocal expressions. Now, these examples are negative, as the researchers focused on distressed relationship dynamics. One could imagine the algorithms may also work the same way when looking at positive vocal patterns, because even married couples sometimes say nice things to each other.
DNA analysis is a staple of crime scenes and crime shows, like HBO's The Night Of, or the old standby, CSI.
So we just gotta get this to the DNA lab, have them confirm it is our victim's blood, and then, case closed.
And it's not just for crime. DNA sequencing also helps determine our relationship to Neanderthals and our primate cousins. Problem is, DNA is a relatively fragile molecule. It doesn't last forever. What's more sturdy is protein. So now researchers have come up with a way to use protein in a similar way to DNA, to link an individual to a piece of evidence or to determine ethnic background. The protein source these scientists studied was human hair from 76 individuals of European American, African American, and Kenyan descent. And they determined that the variation of a couple hundred proteins in a person's hair could be enough to single her out from a group of 1 million individuals. The way it works is that proteins are made according to instructions in DNA. So one individual's genetic variations can result in slightly different proteins being made compared to another individual. And by determining the protein composition, the scientists can then extrapolate info about the DNA. The results are in the journal PLOS One. The researchers say the technique still is not ready for prime time. Ideally, the process needs to be more sensitive to avoid consuming valuable crime scene or archaeological samples in the analysis. And the statistics behind the technique need to be validated too. But someday, they say, it could come within a hair of DNA analysis. Global population is now nearly 7.5 billion, and that's just humans, because our planet's also home to 1.5 billion cows, another billion sheep, and a billion goats. Their combined belches account for a full fifth of the world's methane emissions, and methane's about 30 times more potent at trapping heat than CO2. But those methane emissions might get cut by feeding the grazers something called 3-nitrooxypropanol.
And I can tell you they like it. No rejection at all.
Mike Kinderman, an organic chemist at DSM Nutritional Products in Switzerland. Liking it, in the cow world, he says basically means they'll still gobble up their food, even with this stuff mixed in. Kinderman's company developed the additive a few years back. It jams up an enzyme crucial to the production of methane by microbes that live inside the animals. And it only targets those methane-belching microbes, while leaving the rest of the microbiome untouched. The result? A 30% decrease in methane emissions. The study is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Kinderman says he thinks the compound could be a win-win for the planet and the animals.
The methane is kind of a waste product, and this energy, instead of losing it for the animal, it can be reused for the animal in terms of performance. And at the same time, we are doing something for the greenhouse gas emission and climate change.
The product's not on the market yet. Toxicology tests are ongoing. But the hope is that it might take some of the heat off of beef. Laced with heavy metals, like the drinking water in Flint, Michigan, can be stripped of contaminants using chemicals, filters, membranes, even electric current. But now researchers say they've created what could be a cheaper, more effective solution: a fleet of microscopic, self-propelled aquatic robots, each one the size of just 10 lined-up bacteria, so tiny that 1 billion will fit in a syringe. Each tube-shaped microbot is a sandwich of 3 materials: a graphene outer layer, which binds to heavy metals, a middle layer of nickel, which gives the bots magnetic polarity so they can be pulled through wastewater with magnets, and a platinum inside for propulsion. Just add a bit of peroxide to the wastewater, and it'll react with the platinum to form water and oxygen bubbles, which propel the tubes along. In an hour, a swarm of 200,000 bots scavenged 80% of the lead from 3 milliliters of tainted water, and the researchers estimate that it costs only about 5 cents a liter to do so. The findings are in the journal Nano Letters. The researchers envisioned the bots as a portable solution for small companies. They'd treat their water on-site instead of carting it to a treatment plant. And after the robots do the rounds, the heavy metals can be stripped away, meaning companies can reuse the heavy metals and ultimately keep them out of our waterways. Last week, tens of thousands of gallons of sewage gushed into urban streams in Baltimore because of leaky pipes and flooding rains. And when that happens, it's not just organic matter and microbes that get flushed into aquatic habitats. It's drug residues, too. Caffeine, antihistamines, headache drugs, even amphetamines and heroin. Researchers actually detected all those drugs a few years back in a survey of urban and suburban streams in Baltimore. And they wanted to see what effect illegal drugs, like amphetamines, might have on aquatic ecosystems. So they built artificial streams in the lab, stocked with insects and real creek rocks, slippery ones with biofilms of algae and bacteria growing on them. Then they doped half the streams with amphetamine residues, similar to the concentrations found in real urban streams. After 3 weeks, the mix of microbial life in the amphetamine-laced streams changed significantly compared to the untainted waters. And insects like midges emerged earlier than usual, suggesting that drug residues might be able to alter food webs underwater and on land, too. The results appear in the journal Environmental Science and Technology. Previous studies have shown that even treated sewage has lots of drug residues in it, because most wastewater treatment plants weren't built to filter out pharmaceuticals. One solution, the researchers say, is more up-to-date wastewater infrastructure. Think of it as preventive medicine for the nation's aquatic life.